There has always been a great affection in the Power family to owning dogs, having them as pets. In the case of my grandparents on my father's side, they tended to own black Labradors. The earliest I remember being Chico. And there was also brandy, and later again whiskey. And at their family home at Land's End, beside Dungarvan, whenever one of the dogs died, it was laid to rest in the dog graveyard just beside the big field they had, and marked with a headstone, and likewise with cats they had. One of the last dogs my grandmother had, Mary Power that is, was a Cocker Spaniel. Pepe was his name. And he would spend the evenings or nighttime in the kitchen, whereas previously at Land's End, all the dogs and the cats had outhousing in the yard where they were put at night. They were not given run of the house. Certainly, all cats were kept outside. They were a deterrent for mice and rats around Land's End. Dogs, on the other hand, came into the house during the day only. And all along, my grandparents would walk their dogs at Colligan Woods on the far side of Dungarvan town. We as children occasionally joined them on their walks. And I remember when my grandmother was alone in the car with us, and at the time she had a Triumph Herald. We would be at Colligan Woods going for a walk with possibly whiskey at this stage. And after our walk, Granny would have us, the children, in the back of the car, the Triumph Herald, and we would make the homeward bound journey back to Land's End in Abbeyside. Yet, considering that my grandmother taught all her children to drive, she was a very good driver, what would my grandmother do but pick up speed on the approach to the fork in the road, the Clonmel Road at that, down from Colligan Woods, and at some point she would turn off the ignition key and the engine would die, and we would then have sufficient speed going down the hill towards this Y-Fork junction. And the test was always, will we reach it without the car stopping? And she often did, before turning the key in the ignition again and driving away. Gas woman. And over the years, another way that Granny would exercise the dog was partially, yes, a walk in the woods, and again to have the dog on a lead running beside the car. Certainly on the approach to Land's End anywhere, that was further exercise for the dog. And another favourite walk of the Powers was always Clonay Beach, just outside Dungarvan town. A good sandy 2-mile stretch of beach where we spent many a time during the summer. I remember being out with Granny on a walk with Granny's youngest daughter, Nicola, and of Nicola giving out to me, for possibly shuffling my feet along as we walked. And she turned to me and she said, "Patrick, lift your feet." And ever since, I've tried to walk correctly with the correct posture. Of my parents at home at Barnaby, they have had dogs most of my life. In fact, all my life, even to the present day. To begin with, as we were growing up, my brothers and I, we had a poodle. His name was Monty. Well, he lived to be a great age. He was about 14 years old before he died. And then my parents had golden retrievers. Initially, we had a boy and a bitch, Helga and Hugo. And they had pups, and we kept one of the pups. His name was Hector. So at one stage we had 3 grown golden retrievers at Barnaby. And over the years that we had them, they needed their daily exercise, and they slept in a Wendy hut in the backyard at Barnaby. And the only part of the house where they were allowed was the playroom, a new extension to the house. Otherwise, they were kept in the yard. And again, they had daily walks. They were taken on daily walks up to the Cumberland Mountains or to Colligan Woods. It was cancer that killed all 3 golden retrievers, I believe. Well, in recent years, my mother has had another dog. A Yorkshire Terrier, which was given to her by my younger brother, Roderick. and his wife, Susie. And this dog was called Max. So once again, and at this stage, my mother being on her own, she had the company of a dog. And he has full reign of the house at Barnaby now. And so I believe my mother has recently said he's even fatter than he was before. He's so well fed, and no amount of exercise will shed this weight. In terms of pets that my family and I have had here in London, Maria and I, that is, and the children, well, before Ryan was born, we had a cat. And it was a mixed tabby, given to us from a litter by our friends, the Cooks, Sylvia and Paul Cook, who had a litter of kittens at one stage, and we took one of them. And his name became Timon. Well, we did everything to train Timon, having the cat litter house and all the paraphernalia in the house. Yet it shed hairs everywhere, as pets do. And that was a bother to mainly Maria, who would normally insist on not having pets in the home for the sake that they were untidy. I often remember in the mornings Timon would make its way up to Zoe's room, and it would be on Zoe's bed with her in the morning, and she loved that. Yet, on 2 occasions, Timon disappeared from the house. We had left it out in the back garden, and on the first occasion we called it, and he came back. On the second occasion, Timon never returned, and that was the last we heard of him. There was no collar on the cat and no chip in him, so there was no way of tracing him. Previously, before I came to London, while I was working at Castle House Hotel in Connemara, one of the McEvely children had a dog who gave birth to pups. Well, I took one of the pups in, and it was a cross between a border collie and some other dog. I'm not sure which. And I kept this dog in the cottage where I lived with the men who were staff at the hotel, which belonged to the McEverleys. I didn't have this dog very long, which I christened Ben. For the short time I had him, I tried training him to do the right thing, to heel, and to walk on instruction. And the existence was I would go to work and he was locked up in the cottage. And when I was doing split shifts anyway, and I'd take him out during the afternoons for long walks. And I often visited my friend's house, Michael James Keneally, who lived in Cashel itself, the village of Cashel, with his parents, and they were a lovely family. As I said, it would be the afternoon and I would visit the Keneallys, both Michael James and I having the afternoons off. And Mrs. Keneally often invited me in and gave me afternoon tea. And her husband would come in. He was a forester who came back on his motorbike from work. And I'd see him also. But it would happen that if I had Ben with me, he had to stay outside while I was in the house with the Keneallys in their home. And he had a habit, Ben had a habit of chasing the wheels of moving cars. And I could never discourage him doing this with all the training I was trying to give him. And it materialized anyway that Ben ran after a car and was lost to me for a while, and he never came back, and that was that. Again, I don't think he was tagged, and I didn't have a collar on him, and it is believed, I would have been told at the time, that somebody took him in. That was it, the plain answer. And I was better off without him, because it would have been too much in the long run to have Ben with me. Because soon I was away from there and travelling around to other places for work, and that was that.